Hello everyone and welcome to our World Ocean Day Essex Seagrass Project webinar. Thank you for watching and joining us today. Hopefully it'll be a very interesting webinar for you. Just to start off with, I'll just do a couple of introductions I was going to say, but there's a nice graphic for World Ocean Day that we've been sent to use, which is rather nice. And yeah, just firstly some introductions. My name is Alex Smith. I'm the Marine and Coastal Engagement Officer here at the Essex Wildlife Trust, and very kindly joining me today are...
Hi, I'm Jules Agate, and I am the lead for the LIFE Recreation ReMEDIES Project in Essex.
And hello, I'm Emma. I work for Project Seagrass and the Essex Marine Survey Lead.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us. So we do a lot of work together, Jules, Emma and me, across our Seagrass project in Essex. And although this is for World Oceans Day, we will be sharing this around throughout the year, throughout the Essex community. So it applies all year round, really. So yeah, just to get stuck in straight away, the first important question topic might be, what is seagrass? Some people might have a good idea of what seagrass is already. Some people might not have even heard of it before, so it might be worth going into that first. So seagrass, it's the only flowering plant that's able to live in seawater and pollinate whilst being submerged. So it's pretty unique in that respect, which makes it rather special. It's found in shallow waters all around the world, apart from the polar region. So it's very almost kind of ubiquitous around the world across all marine environments. There are 72 species found worldwide, and they often grow in large groups, which kind of gives the appearance of an underwater meadow. So almost like a grassland that you might see on terrestrial land. It's almost the same underwater as well. So it's going to be a really beautiful place and habitat to look at or to snorkel through. They have a complex root system, which is known as a rhizome, which means that although they do have seeds and flowers, so they can pollinate and produce that way, they can also reproduce by effectively cloning themselves through this rhizome, and it can expand. So sometimes one whole seagrass meadow can be just from one clone effectively, which is pretty amazing. And seagrass have been around for ages as well. So it first appeared in a fossil record approximately 90 million years ago, which is around the time of the dinosaurs. So yeah, it's been on this planet for a long, long time. So why is seagrass important, you might ask? Well, many reasons. The first of which is that it's a biodiversity hotspot. So that picture on the top left hand corner there is of a rather lovely seahorse, and that's just one of the many, many species that seagrass can support. So not only is a species by itself seagrass, it's also a habitat too. It's about 30 times more species are found in seagrass habitats compared to the adjacent habitats next to it. So it shows how important it is as a biodiversity hotspot. Other biodiversity hotspots include things like coral reefs and tropical rainforests. So it just shows you how important they are. The bottom left picture there, coastal protection and sediment stabilization. So yeah, they're really important for things like flood protection, coast protection. So particularly as sea level is rising, they can be really important for that. So similar to how a woodland might be really useful for flood management and protection in the terrestrial environment, it's the same for seagrass as well. And in that top right hand picture there, we've got a little CO2 symbol there. So seagrass is incredible at storing carbon. So even though seagrass only takes up about 0.1% of the ocean floor, it accounts for around 18% of the carbon stored in the ocean floor in areas of seagrass. So it's really, really amazing carbon storage, which is, of course, for climate change could be a very good nature-based climate change solution. And then the bottom right picture, seagrass can support commercial fisheries. So as we said, it's a biodiversity hotspot, and so about 70% of fish, their life cycle is spent. Part of their life cycle is spent in areas of seagrass. So just again shows you how important it is. So next slide, moving on to threats and pressures. So although seagrass is amazing and resilient and pretty widespread, they are, unfortunately, like a lot of species and habitats around the world, they are coming under a lot of threats and pressures. So going through some of these pictures here, the two left pictures, they're from moorings and from boats and anchors. So when boats, we'll go into this a little bit more later on, but when boats moor or anchor in areas of seagrass, their chains or the boats themselves can scour or destroy areas of seagrass. You can see there in the pictures where a boat has been and just completely destroyed that area of seagrass. The middle top picture there, that's makes it look like everything's getting a bit warm. So because of climate change and sea temperatures rising, ocean acidification as well, they also have a detrimental effect on seagrass. That bottom picture there, that's all excess algae effectively. So from excess nutrients in the seawater, whether that's from sewage or runoff, lots of excess nutrients getting to the marine environment, and then that causes the buildup of excess algae growth, and that kind of smothers, outcompetes seagrass. And then the right hand side picture is of some people bait digging. So they're just one of many recreational pressures that can impact on seagrass, even just walking across it, things like kayakers or even dog walking, digging, all of those have a negative effect on seagrass, and combined all of these different threats means that seagrass is not in the best way. I'll go into that in a little second. But seagrass in the UK, first of all, we've got two species of seagrass here, one of which is called common eelgrass or Zostera marina, and the other of which is dwarf eelgrass, which is Zostera knowltii. On the left side, you can see two pictures there. On the top left is the common eelgrass, and that's quite, or compared to the dwarf eelgrass, it's much thicker, much longer as well. It grows between 20 to 110 centimeters long. And dwarf eelgrass is generally much smaller and between 5 to 22 centimeters long, typically. The common eelgrass, that's generally found in subtidal areas, so stays beneath the surface of the water, whereas dwarf eelgrass, that's mostly found in intertidal areas, so where the tide comes in and out, so not always submerged. So now moving on to seagrass in Essex specifically. Well, we do have seagrass in Essex, which is pretty amazing. I always thought seagrass is more of a kind of tropical exotic species growing up, but I didn't realise that we have seagrass in Essex. There's actually a fairly good amount of it in particular areas. Oh, excuse me. But unfortunately, because with Essex being full of estuaries, we have very murky water, which means that sometimes you don't even know that it's there. You might not be able to spot it. But we do actually have ideal habitat for the dwarf eelgrass here because it is intertidal with those estuaries. However, even though historically we would have had a lot of Zostera knowltii here, we've lost a lot of it. It's at least 44% since 1936 across the UK and Essex, and actually in Essex, and particularly some estuaries like the Straw estuary, the meadows are just 2% of their historical extent. So we've had huge losses, which is why we want to try to restore this really important and beautiful habitat and species. Which brings me on to the Essex Seagrass Project. So this is a key project of the Essex Wildlife Trust Marine and Coastal Recovery team. It fits within our goals to get to at least 30% of land and sea protected for nature's recovery by 2030, that should say, sorry, not 2020. Obviously, that's quite a lot to do, but we're ambitious. We want to try to do it. Essex Wildlife Trust is Essex's largest wildlife charity, and we're working to create a wilder Essex because nature clearly needs our help. And for this, we are collaborating with lots of different partners across all our different projects. But specifically with our Seagrass project, we're working with Jules and Emma from ReMEDIES and Project Seagrass to reduce these pressures on and restore seagrass in Essex. So we've got a two-pronged approach to the Essex Seagrass project, one of which is passive restoration and the other which is active restoration. And the ultimate outcomes of this are to measure coastal recreational pressures on seagrass meadows and coastal wildlife, and to establish an approach to reduce these pressures, and then also to inform locations and considerations for future seagrass restoration projects and the future management of seagrass in Essex. And it gives you a broad outline there of what we'd like to do. Yeah, the first of these is working with ReMEDIES and Jules. So I'll let Jules take over for a second, and yeah, she can outline the ReMEDIES project and yeah, what we're doing together.
Okay, so thanks, Alex. Yeah, so I lead the LIFE Recreation ReMEDIES Project in Essex, and it's a great project to work on and a great place to work. Next slide, please. So LIFE Recreation ReMEDIES started in 2019, and it was meant to be 4 years, and we were extended for a year because of COVID, so we'll be ending in October of this year. And ReMEDIES stands for Reducing and Mitigating Erosion and Disturbance Impacts Affecting the Seabed. Really catchy. But it's a really great collaborative project led by Natural England with partners the Royal Yachting Association, Green Blue, the Marine Conservation Society, the Ocean Conservation Trust, Plymouth City Council, and the Tamar Estuaries Consultative Forum. So we've been running for 5 years, and we've learned a lot about seagrass and about mitigating the effects of recreation on it. And all that we've learned, we will be sharing on our website and via reports, so that it can be used, what we've learned can be used in future efforts to recover and restore seagrass in Essex and beyond. Next slide, please. So these are the 5 sites that we're working on across the south of England, and they are they have seagrass in them that has been assessed to be in unfavourable condition. And one of the sites you can see there is the Essex Estuaries. So these special areas of conservation were set up under European law, but have been retained after Brexit. So they're not protected specifically for the seagrass, but habitats within the sites, such as sand flats and mud flats, can support seagrass meadows. However, condition assessments made by Natural England have found that these habitats are in unfavourable condition and are failing. But by restoring the seagrass, which is an important feature, we can improve the condition. So seagrass is mainly the focus in most of the sites. However, in the Fowl and Healthers in Cornwall, we also have merle beds. So merle is red seaweed. So you can see the picture there of seagrass on the top with an anemone and merle at the bottom. So it's a hard red seaweed which forms reef-like structures on the seafloor, and that builds up over thousands of years, and it creates a really valuable habitat for a lot of marine species. Next slide, please. So the aim of ReMEDIES is twofold. So we want to improve the condition by both assessing the recreational impacts and also then addressing those recreational impacts. So these coastal sites that I showed you have different features. They have different populations around them and levels of recreational use. So assessing how people's recreation actually affects the sites has been really key to the project, so that we can then define suitable interventions that will help to reduce those impacts. So some of the methods that we've been using and trialling to actually mitigate the impacts are installing new kinds of mooring systems. So where people moor, usually the systems tend to have a detrimental effect on the seabed. So we've been trying to, we've used various different mechanisms to try to reduce that impact and monitor their effectiveness. We've working with boaters and local communities to get them to buy into the use of different kinds of systems, to promote best practice when mooring, when anchoring, and when walking over seagrass, because we have intertidal seagrass, which Alex explained was impacted by trampling, as well as subtidal seagrass impacted by recreational boats. So we've tried voluntary no anchor zones in some places where we've had marker buoys which show people where not to anchor. And we found that engaging with communities and with boaters on where they are and how willing people are to use them has been really important as part of the project. And then we've had active restoration taking place in 2 of the sites, collecting seagrass seeds from Zostra Marina, planting them into the aquarium in Plymouth, growing them up and then replanting the seedlings and the seeds back out into the ocean. And all of that work was based on work by Emma's organisation, Project Seagrass, and what they've shared with us. Next slide, please. So one of the recreational impacts that affect particularly our sites in the south of England is the mooring of recreational boats. So the diagram there shows a typical swing mooring, which is usually a heavy block on the seabed. It has a chain, sometimes 1 heavy chain, sometimes 2 chains, and then a buoy which the boat attaches to. So as the tide goes out, the chain falls onto the seabed, and then the boat will be moved around by currents, by the wind and by waves, and you can get this scouring of the seagrass around the mooring. So in areas with greater tidal range, the chain will need to be longer, and that means the area of chain scour increases. Next slide, please. Yeah, so here you can see the scouring effect caused by mooring with the chain and anchoring with that big scar through the seagrass. So each anchoring can damage, on average, 4 seagrass plants, but the scale of the damage really depends on the skill of the crew and how they are actually anchoring within that seagrass meadow. So using best practice and talking to boaters through the RYA and contacts and through lots of our public engagement, we've been advising people on how to anchor without causing quite so much damage. Next slide, please. And with moorings, there are different designs that we can try to reduce the impact of the traditional type of mooring on the seabed. So one of the simplest ways to do that is to attach buoys to the chain, which lifts it all up. The block can be replaced with a helical anchor, which screws into the seabed, and that allows the chain to move around while still withstanding the strong pressures that are placed upon the boat to keep it nice and secure. So we've tried different systems and designs in different places. And since ReMEDIES Project, there have been other projects that have also tried in other places, other types of designs as well. So in Core Sand and Plymouth Sound, in 4 years following the installation of advanced mooring system, the Marine Conservation Society and Ocean Conservation Trust reported a 212% increase in seagrass cover within the mooring area. So that's really exciting because it shows that these systems can actually work. Next slide, please. So another system uses a flex riser or a stretchy bit instead of a chain. So as the tide goes out and the level falls, it contracts and then it can expand when the tide comes in. And these systems are often used in countries like Canada and the US, and we've been trialing them here as well, and there are various options available. So have a look at our website and you can see more information about those. Next slide, please. So overall, we've done a lot in 5 years, and there's a lot of achievements, a lot of information available on our website, we're really keen to share everything we've done and learned so that other people can take our knowledge and go forward with it and hopefully do even better. So we've installed 16 advanced mooring systems of different types and produced a report about how the different systems that are available worldwide and how beneficial they've been. We've put in place voluntary no anchor zones at 2 sites in Plymouth Sound and then also in the Solent. And really key part of it has been monitoring how well they've been used and observed and respected. And we found that people in general are very happy to respect that once they understand the reason why. We've put in information panels about seagrass and about mooring in some sites, not in Essex yet, but we're planning to do that. The Royal Yachting Association have put seagrass on the map. So they're trying to get seagrass into navigational tools used by boaters so that people can avoid it when they're boating and even when they're windsurfing and doing other water sports that might have an impact. Overall, 5.6 hectares of subtidal seagrass were planted up till last week when some extra went in, and we've now nearly reached our target of 8 hectares in Plymouth Sound and Solent together. And that's with Zostra Marina. And as I said, that's based a lot on Project Seagrass's methodologies. And a really key part of it all is going out, talking to people, our engagement and education program in schools. And people have really generally heard about seagrass now more commonly than when we started. So when we go out and talk to people, they actually say, oh yeah, I've seen seagrass on the TV. And they're really interested in talking to us about it. And we've also been able to engage with boaters in our areas who are now coming to us for advice on how to damage the seabed less. So next slide, please. So over to Essex. So this is the Essex Estuaries site map of the Special Area of Conservation. It's almost 500 kilometre squares, and it encompasses estuaries of the Colne, the Blackwater, the Crouch, the Roach, and a bit of the Thames. So the blue area is the boundary of the SAC, and those green patches there are the seagrass layer, which we know of currently, which are mapped. So as you can see, a lot of the seagrass is actually outside of the special area of conservation. It's a really beautiful and important area. It has a lot of protection because it's very valuable in terms of conservation. We have 20% of the UK salt marsh within the SAC, and it's really beautiful as well. But because we know a lot of the seagrass is outside of the SAC, we need to work with a lot of partners and other organisations and communities so that we're protecting and restoring seagrass across the whole of the Essex coast. Next slide. So in Essex, because we've got intertidal seagrass, which is slightly different, and because a lot of it is outside of the protected areas, we've been focusing a lot on engagement, on building relationships with organisations like Project Seagrass and with the Essex Wildlife Trust, so that we can really get the message out there to do more to restore, protect, and mitigate against recreational impacts. We set up a seagrass specialist group, and that group we've been able to share knowledge with a lot of different researchers and people working on the ground with seagrass. And we've been doing engagement work, which Alex will talk about, and it's been really great to work collaboratively. So I hand back over to Alex, who will continue. Thank you.
Yes, thanks very much, Jules. That's really brilliant, very interesting. So just moving on a little bit, we'll talk about engagement in a second, but firstly, some of the surveys we've been doing in these areas alongside ReMEDIES. So these are called recreational impact surveys, and essentially since 2021, and then now this year is the last year of them as they currently are. We've been using our fantastic citizen scientists, our volunteers, to conduct surveys along our Essex coast across 12 sites where we've got either current or historic seagrass, to look at the different pressures and impacts on those areas. So we have 2 volunteers at each of those sites, and it's in the summer months, so July and August, and they do 3 surveys in each of those months, and they incorporate different tide times, so high tide, low tide, and then a busy day on a weekend compared to a weekday, to really encompass the different levels of recreation and pressures that there are on areas of seagrass. So they get all of their training and materials provided. We have a nice training day. We go and visit one of our sites to look at seagrass, and then off they go through the summer and conduct these surveys, and they record all these different recreational impacts, whether it's watercraft like boats and jet skis, or just walkers going on the area, bait diggers, swimmers, all of those. And they record all of that data into this app called Survey 123, which we then collect and can show in some results, which I'll show in just a minute. So this is part of the survey pack that the volunteers get. You can see there, got a vessel crib sheet, so for all the different types of vessels that they might see. Got a site information pack, so directions how to get there, what they're looking at, some coastal bird ID, tide tables, a leaflet, things like that. And then the blue and black item you might see there might look familiar to some. It's actually a rangefinder, most commonly found on a golf course, but we found an arguably better use for it. And that's how we measure the distances to a certain vessel. So if, for example, from your site point or your survey point, you're looking across the estuary and you see a boat or a kayak going across, you work out how far away they are. And then you also use the compass, which is just there as well, to work out the bearing of it as well. So you can see how close it is to your site point and the seagrass area. And yeah, these are survey locations in Essex, our lovely Essex coast. So you can see there all the different points are a particular survey site. The blue dots are areas where there would have historically been seagrass. That's particularly on the Colne estuary, but it's not found anymore, unfortunately. The orange points are where there is still seagrass, but it must be said, most of those, there's very little left, unfortunately. There is quite a lot still down at Southend. We've got 4 survey points down there, but the other sites are, yeah, very low on their numbers, unfortunately. And yeah, these are some of the recreational disturbances that they record during their surveys. I won't go through all of them, but just different types of boats, jet skis, kayaks, dog walkers, cyclists, swimmers, rowers, all of those, and all of these are input into that Survey 123 app. Yeah, all of that data that we collect, we're using it to create this fantastic web page. So this is just a sneak peek as such. This will be published a little bit later on in the year, but essentially this gives this whole website would give lots of information about the project and what we're doing, how we're doing it, like you just heard, but also shows all the results that we've got. So you can see on that top chart there in green, you've got all of our different survey sites and then the levels across each year of how much recreational pressures there are. And then the bottom chart in blue, you can see the individual type of pressure or type of vessel recorded, and you can interact with all of those. You can click on them, look at the timings, and also on the right hand side you've got the map and you can zoom in and out. It's really a fantastic tool. Our GIS people have been absolutely fantastic in putting this together, so we'll be really excited to share this later in the year when we get our final results. And yeah, we'll also use that for engagement too. We'll be able to share those results with people in communities and sailing groups around the county. We've been doing plenty of engagement already, whether it's at some eco festival or a coastal guided walk, handing out our leaflets across our centres or across the county, doing comms on social media. All of that, we've been doing plenty to try and get the word out there as to how important seagrass is, what we can do to protect it, and yeah, just get people talking, really. And yeah, that's kind of the first step of our seagrass project. But the next step is the seagrass restoration in Essex. And for that, we've teamed up with a fantastic Project Seagrass to look at seagrass restoration in Essex. And that is where Emma will come in and join us and tell us about that.
Great. Thank you so much, Alex and Jules. Hi, so yeah, I'm Emma. I work for Project Seagrass, and for the last 2 years, I've been the Essex Marine Survey Lead, and I've been exploring the potential of restoring seagrass along the Essex coastline. So just a quick change of the slides, please, Alex. And another, if that's okay. So who are Project Seagrass? Project Seagrass are an international environmental organisation, and we're committed to securing a future for seagrass. We have a vision of thriving, abundant and well-managed seagrass meadows. So we have 3 pillars, which is the core of all of our work. So next slide, please, Alex. They are community, research and action. And collaborating with Alex and Jules has been fantastic because these guys have done an amazing job with the community engagement and stakeholder engagement. And so I've been able to focus a little bit more on research and action. Next slide, please, Alex. Across the UK nationally, we have 5 projects. So we've got one in Scotland, we've got the Solent, North Wales and South Wales, and of course, Essex. Next slide, please, Alex. So typically, we've been focusing on restoring common eelgrass or Zostera marina, which Jules slightly touched on with the Solent restoration work that's been going on down there with ReMEDIES. And the way that we do this is, next slide, please, Alex. Firstly, we have to harvest the seeds. So we go up to a meadow in Porthincline, which is North Wales, and it's 29 hectares. So it's a really healthy, abundant meadow. And we harvest the seeds just by snorkeling and diving over the meadow. The seeds are kind of buoyant, so they rise above it. You can actually see kind of behind me, they're a little bit golden and they glow, and you can just pick the seeds by hand and pop them into your net. We obviously don't want to over harvest, so we make sure that we only take every other seed that we see, and we make sure that we don't rip out any of the rhizomes. These seeds we then take down to warehouse in Bridgend, and we let all the seagrass leaf matter rot, and then the viable seeds drop down in these great big tanks that we have, and we can sieve them out and pour them out, and then we take them to our seagrass nursery. So here are the seeds down below. We keep them in cool saline conditions, lots of water flowing over them, and these like nice dark containers, and that's how we keep them fresh, but we don't want them to germinate. Next slide, please, Alex. Perfect. So then come early spring, so around February and March, we then have epic planting projects across the Solent, Scotland and North Wales. And we've had lots of different methods that we use. So we have in the past used Hessian bags, but a method that we're using at the moment is called dispenser injection seeding, so DIS, and that's what you can see this person holding. You might recognize it, it's a cork and gun, and we've slightly adapted it for our planting methods. So within the container or canister, we have a mix of mud that we make up ourselves and seeds, and we calibrate it so we know exactly how many seeds that we're injecting in every metre square. So this is what we've done for the common eelgrass. However, dwarf eelgrass or Zostera noltii, we have a slight issue with it because the seeds are a lot smaller, and so we can't do the typical snorkeling over the meadow and picking the seeds. So we've had to adapt our method. And here we have a donor meadow. So this is where a meadow is quite large and hectareage, is abundant in seagrass, so has high seagrass density and coverage, and doesn't have too many other threats such as the mooring and the trampling, which Jules and Alex previously spoke about. So what we do is we get a piece of plastic piping, and we collect a transplant. So this is what you can see here. The orange is our piping that we've cut, so it's 20 centimetres long and 10 centimetres across, and we pop it into our donor meadow. So we squish down, and then we collect the material underneath, and we have all the sediment, rhizome, roots and shoots, and then we can take it to our recipient site. So somewhere where the seagrass is not present and used to be present, or where potentially the health of the seagrass is a degraded state. So we make a little hole, and then we can shimmy our pipe in and leave the transplant in place. So much like terrestrial gardening. Next slide. So here we go. Here are the transplants that we did this May. You can see the orange piping, and they're pooling in the water is our seagrass above it. And we used 2 different treatments on the right-hand side of the slides. We've got we're looking at different configuration of the planting of the transplants. So we're looking at having 3 transplants clustered together and then checkered, and then 1 transplant per metre square, and that's on the right of that. So we're investigating basically, does the density of the transplants planted together have an impact of the success and growth of those transplants? Next slide, please. Where do we do this? We did it in St Lawrence, the Blackwater. So this is one of the sites that was one of the recreational activity and threat sites that ReMEDIES and Essex Wildlife Trust use for their volunteers. And that actually fed into why we did the transplant trials here, because we knew that there were very few threats, which is ideal to have as a space where we're doing our very first proof of concept transplants. Next slide, please, Alex. Here is the actual site. So this is a drone image that we took last June. You can see the salt marsh, and then you can see a bit of the seagrass that's above it, and then the expanse of the mudflat that we've been transplanting out to. Next slide, please. Here are the corner plots that we collect. When we lay out all of those grids that we basically saw earlier, we have to collect each point with something called a differential GPS, and then that gives us very exact information of those points, so we can go back and monitor them. Next slide, please, Alex. You'll see here that there's a row where I've labelled 1 to 4 of those plots, and the 2 green rectangles are basically a version of those 2 treatments that I showed you earlier. So we're using an elevation gradient, so we're going out into the mudflat, and we're looking at the slight differences in the sediment, so the depth of the mud before we hit this sort of clay layer. And then we're also, number 5, which is on the left-hand corner of that image there, is in slightly more sandy sediment. So we're looking at the differences in sediment, the mud and the sand. Next slide, please. So what do? When we collect our cores, we have to put down a quadrat, and we do a quick seagrass condition assessment. So we look at the percentage cover, we look at the amount of algae, and then we can take our core and get the exact point so we can go back and monitor. So we took 100, and that's how many we put into those 4 plots that we showed. And then the 5th plot, we had some nursery nautii as well. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the nursery nautii in a second. And we had 10 people doing it. It's a bit of an operational mission because we're in deep mud. And it's always great to have the volunteers that we do that come and join us. And of course, Alex and Jules. And it's always a good day out. Next slide, please. So these are the cores that we took from the meadow. And so we use that DGPS that gives us 1 centimetre accuracy and allows us to exactly go back and pinpoint where we took the cores. And the reason we want to know is because we have to also monitor the recovery of that meadow, because we don't want to be just simply transplanting and moving some of the seagrass and then leaving holes everywhere. So we want to make sure that the initial meadow is recovering over the summer. Next slide, please. And we've spoken a lot, or Jules and Alex have spoken a lot about the threats to seagrass, and we don't want to aid in this. So to prevent trampling, we wear mud shoes, which are the little wooden slates, I guess, on the left-hand side. And then you basically tie them or lash them onto your legs and feet. So you can walk easily across the meadow without sinking into it and trampling it. Next slide, please. This is the actual transplanting. So we have volunteers in both of these pictures, taking a core. So he's put down his quadrat and he's doing a little bit of a data assessment, and then he's going to take his core. And then on the right-hand side, sorry, we've got someone who's about to plant their transplant. Next slide, please. Monitoring. So it's important to us that we always monitor, obviously, because we're led by research. And so we go back every 3 to 4 months to monitor the transplants that we've done and the donor meadow. And what you can see is also a probe, which we use to record salinity and temperature. And then there's a length of seagrass blade that's being measured there with a ruler. Next slide, please. So the Seagrass Nursery is based in South Wales, And basically, we can take back some of the cores, which we have done so from Southend-on-Sea, where there's a large, healthy seagrass meadow. And at this site, we're running a couple of different trials, but hopefully we're going to develop this as a place where there's a stock of Noltii, so we don't have to rely on donor meadows that are in the wild, and we can instead take straight from the seagrass nursery, so we don't have to impact on seagrass meadows that potentially are slightly threatened. Next slide, please, Alex. So what we're doing at the moment is doing a biosecurity trial, and this is with the Southend-on-Sea cores that we took back to the nursery. We want to be able to plant these basically in the Blackwater estuary. But to do so, we need to know what else we're transplanting, because obviously we're taking all this sediment that you can see in the left-hand photo. So within that, we've got worms, which is what's in the middle photo there, that's a ragworm, and we've got crabs and snails. So we basically want to know what we're moving and check to see if any of it is invasive, because we want to make sure that we're not encouraging the spread of invasive species across the UK. Next slide, please. So what next? We're growing out our nursery stock and planting that in July, where we do some more of our monitoring, and then obviously developing our future Essex Seagrass project with Alex and Jules. And yeah, if you would like to get involved with Project Seagrass, then obviously go through Essex Wildlife Trust, but also you can get in touch through volunteers at projectseagrass.org. Thank you. And I'm going to hand over to Alex.
Thank you, Emma. Yeah, so interesting. I hear you talk a lot, but I always find it, yeah, absolutely fascinating. It's great to be involved and collaborating all together. So yeah, just thought I'd touch on future plans really just quickly before we finish. 2024 is the final year of ReMEDIES as it currently is, with surveys and the engagement push, but we do want to have a legacy out of that. So we're looking at having maybe an information panel over at St Lawrence where we do our transplants, have a map like that, the data that we shared earlier on, having a celebration at the end of the year, writing up a report so we don't lose any of this knowledge and we can really build on it going forward. We'd love to collaborate further with Project Seagrass going forward. So lots more transplants, other sites, different methodologies, all of that is really exciting stuff, and working with lots of other partners as well with our Seagrass Specialist Workshop. So what can you do to help seagrass? We've been talking a lot about what we're doing, but how can everybody else help as well? We've got three very simple main ways that you can help seagrass. The first of which is if you're on a boat or watercraft, try to avoid anchoring in areas of seagrass or any damage in areas of seagrass, whether it's trampling or mooring, just to reduce that disturbance and reduce that damage will go a long way. Avoid trampling as well, as we just mentioned, anything that disturbs them. If you know where those areas of seagrass are, now you can know what to look out for. Just, yeah, being very careful where you stand, where you do any activity. And then also spread the word. As you've learned about seagrass today, hopefully you found it interesting and you want to share the love as such. Tell your friends, tell your family, and yeah, spread the word so we can help to protect it even further. And then also, this is something that Project Seagrass does. And Em, if you want to quickly touch on Seagrass Spotter.
Yeah, thank you. So this is an app that we have, and it's where you can help us because we don't know where all the seagrass is. So it's really crucial that we have lots of people trying to collaborate and let us know where you spot it. So basically, you can download the Seagrass Spotter app. It's in multiple languages, so if English isn't your first language, then do look out for the different languages that are on there. And you go to the beach, you spot your seagrass, take a photo of it, and then you can upload how confident you are, what different threats there are facing that seagrass, or even if there's no seagrass, absence data is also really useful. So let us know if it's just a blank beach, you can upload that onto the Seagrass Spotter app, and that's really useful for us to map over the years the changing seagrass meadows. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. And then another just quick thing is if you dive or snorkel at all, maybe not so much diving off of the Essex coast, but if that's something you do, you can sign up with Sea Search. So they're volunteers and they can gather lots of biological or habitat data. You can go on their Facebook, you can email them, and they provide training in recording skills for sea search, dives and snorkels. So check that out if you're interested. And yeah, that's pretty much it from us. I hope you have found it interesting. You've learned a lot about seagrass and what we're doing as part of the Essex Seagrass Project. We love talking about it. We want to spread the love for seagrass. So yeah, thank you for watching. Try to get involved, and yeah, bye for now.
Thank you.
Thanks. Happy World Ocean Day, everyone.
Happy World Ocean Day.